Hi, everyone, and welcome to Power of Parks, where we share inspiring stories from people who have benefited from nature, parks, and recreation. My guest today is CBS 12's Chuck Weber. He's a reporter for the West Palm Beach-based TV news station. When he isn't bringing the news to the South Florida area, he enjoys birdwatching in parks and natural areas around the county. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in to talk to you.
So I want to start by asking you, how did you get involved in birdwatching?
When I was a kid, I guess I had somewhat of an aptitude or interest in that. And then I always remember the time my grandfather took me out around our house and pointed out all the birds in the yard. And we lived on a farm in the Midwest, and I was amazed at what he was able to point out. And he also knew the sounds of the birds. He could point out the songs and the calls, and I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive, pretty neat. And so I thought, geez, that's something maybe that I'd like to do or learn more about. And then when I moved to South Florida for my job in the early 1980s, I know that's a long time ago, but I was impressed by the number of wading birds I would see just, along our canals and in the edges of our ponds. We didn't have that many wading birds up in the Midwest. And so I thought, wow, this is really pretty wild. There are different kinds of wading birds. And so I wanted to learn more. In the late 1980s, Phil and Ann Weinrich had birdwatching classes every year at Pine Jog Center. They had birdwatching classes for several years, and Phil was a fantastic lecturer, very enthusiastic, and he was a teacher in the school system, but just really inspired a lot of us to take up birdwatching as a hobby. And, all these years later, here I am birdwatching. I got pretty intensively involved in birdwatching, I'd say, in the early 90s. And since then, I'm out every weekend just about.
Okay, so it started from a young age, and when you got here is really when you developed that passion for watching birds?
Absolutely. I was looking, I guess, for something, an activity, a way to meet people too, and then birding just was fascinating to me.
So talking about meeting people, what's been your experience in the birdwatching community when it comes to meeting people?
There is a community of bird watchers, definitely, and for better or for worse, we're a group that is, I guess you could say some of us are kind of nerdy, but from all walks of life. That's a very interesting aspect of it too. We come from all walks of life, all backgrounds, and we share a love of birds and just getting out in the outdoors and experiencing nature in this way.
What are your favorite locations for birdwatching?
Well, that's hard to say because Palm Beach County is really neat because we have so many different kinds of habitats, different kinds of environments, and they have different kinds of birds. And so it's really tough to say what's my favorite spot because there are lots of favorite spots. Riverbend Park always comes to mind because that is such a gorgeous area. It's beautiful, a lot of shade, so you can just walk or bike or whatever through there. But it's great for birds too. It's in the northern part of the county. The big concentration of oak trees, I think, draws some different species of birds, and some different species of birds are found there that you don't find in other parts of the county, at least in the concentrations you do at Riverbend Park. So that's one of my favorite spots. It's beautiful, it's great, it's good. It's become really one of our top migration spots too. And any time of year you go there, even in the summertime, when it's kind of slower here, there are some birds that nest there that don't nest, at least in the concentrations in other parts of the county. So I like Riverbend. I'd have to say that's probably my favorite. Boynton Inlet, which is, what's the official name of the park?
Ocean Inlet Park.
Ocean Inlet Park. What a great spot. You get the birds that are right there along the shore, and it's, for some reason, birds that are seabirds that pass by tend to come in closer there at Boynton Inlet, and so we've had some great birds at Boynton Inlet.
So tell me why you birdwatch. What do you enjoy about it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. That's great. No, I do know. It gets me out away from the city sometimes, not always. I mean, there are great birdwatching spots in cities. But it gets you out in a different environment at the very least. Just someplace you aren't, going during your work week, and it's just kind of like a little mini vacation, really. That's the way I look at it. It really is just a nice, refreshing change of pace. You're out in nature, you see birds, you enjoy them, enjoy the colors or their, the different movements and mannerisms. and it's just, you're in a different world. It's kind of like, well, you kind of leave the city,
It's an escape.
yeah, it's an escape. It absolutely is. And so I enjoy that. I enjoy it a lot. And it's good for my mental health, I'm sure. Once in a while, you put in some miles walking too. Riverbend's a good place to put on some miles, and I enjoy that too.
What about birds themselves? Why birds? What's the importance of birds on our ecosystem? And why are they so interesting?
Well, they're part of the ecology for sure. I mean, they have a role in our ecosystem. They feed on plants or insects, and they do help control insects, certain birds especially. So their role in nature is important. And I think we kind of hit on it before, but one of the neat things is that birds are probably one of the more visible elements of nature. So birds are one of the things you can more easily see. And granted, there are many different kinds, and it's a challenge then to learn and to know them. But they're right there. They're present. You can see them. They fly around. And I think that's a window for a lot of people just to experience nature. And this is a very accessible or more accessible part. Mammals are harder to see sometimes, and they're less predictable. I mean, yeah, there are usually deer up at Riverbend first thing in the morning. That's another neat aspect of Riverbend. Bobcats you can see up at Riverbend too. But the chances of seeing them are much less than birds. And so birds are accessible. They are important in nature. They're important in the ecology, but they're accessible, and they're kind of, for me anyway, and for I think most of us birders, they're our window into nature and our enjoyment of nature.
And so would you say that when you head out to go bird watching, what kind of birds you'll encounter for that day?
You have an idea, or you may have a target, you may have some thoughts about what you'd like to see, but that's one of the great things about birding is it's different every time, and there are always surprises. You're always surprised. At Winding Waters Natural Area back this past fall, I was in there looking for some sparrows, wasn't seeing any sparrows, because that's one of the few places to see sparrows. We found a groove-billed ani, which is from out west, further west in Mexico, and we've had them in the county, but very rarely. Well, there it is that day. That was the last thing I was expecting to see, maybe ever, because I wasn't sure we'd ever see one again in Palm Beach County, but we found it there that day, and so it was a great surprise. There have been other great surprises, as you know, out at West Delray Park, for instance. I mean, you just never know what you're going to find, and that's one of the beauties of birding.
Do you usually head out with a camera or just a pair of binoculars?
Well, I'm old school. I've been doing this a long time, so it used to be just binoculars only for me. There were back in the day people who took pictures, and we thought, oh, yeah, that's nice, and that was good for documenting. But now, with the advance of digital photography, most everybody has a camera. I have a pretty unsophisticated camera, but I do go out with the camera, and now it's really more expected that if you see something unusual or rare, that you're going to document it, or at least try to document it. And so I was reluctant at first, but the camera actually is a good teacher too. I mean, by taking pictures, sometimes you notice things, and you get to study your photos, and I probably have a greater appreciation or understanding of just some of the field marks and some of the, mannerisms too of these birds that I didn't have before. But thanks to photography, I think it's expanded our knowledge, really.
So obviously the hobby itself has changed. What other ways has it transformed? Do you see different species? Maybe some birds are disappearing from the area. How has it all changed?
Yeah, it has changed. It really has. Some birds we used to see all the time, the smooth-billed anis, which are native to the Bahamas and the islands, but were here in South Florida in some significant numbers throughout South Florida, almost disappeared. They completely disappeared. And we weren't sure why that is. But then a few of them have been showing up in recent years, and we're seeing them a little bit more often. That's one example. The black-bellied whistling ducks were never here when I started birding, and then they've just exploded They were like over in the Sarasota area. You'd have to drive over there to see them, but now they've come in and they're everywhere. They're very common at, you see them at Riverbend, you see them at Green Key, Nature Center, usually there in decent numbers. That's an example of a bird that's expanded. And I think there are a lot of birds that have expanded. And some non-native birds have come in. The Egyptian geese, not happy about them coming in, but they're here too.
Oh, so the dark-billed cuckoo. So what was your reaction to that and seeing that bird at West Delray Regional?
That was just an amazing bird. The birders that found that are there. These guys are not just out on the weekends. They're out pretty much every day after work if they can break away from work. Marcelo Gomes and Kyle Matera were out like they are many afternoons, and they come across this bird at West Delray Park. It's not the prettiest habitat, but it's well used, well utilized, and so this bird is hanging out there. And we shouldn't have any cuckoos here this time of year, really. And so they immediately thought of the species that do pass through and that we do have in North America. And then there was a birder from Miami, or Miami-Dade, who said that is a dark-billed cuckoo, which is native to South America. So that's just blew everybody away. For number one, that a cuckoo was here that time of year, and then the fact that it was an actual South American species is just incredible. And I'd never seen it. Some of our birders had seen it in South America. This bird here is just incredible. How did it get here? I don't know. The people that were there said they didn't see any evidence of it being in a cage, kept in a cage, the wear on the feathers, etc. And that's not a bird that probably is used too often in the pet trade. But just an incredible bird, beautiful bird, very interesting bird, and just amazing that it showed up out at West Delray Park and that we had it right here in Palm Beach County. Drew birders from all over the country. They came in. I don't know how many, probably a few hundred came in. Yeah, a lot of people. The day I was out, there were like 70 people, somebody counted. And we were all, and when we finally found the bird, everybody rushed over there. It was pretty wild, pretty wild. And the who's who of birding from our state, they all showed up. The guy that coordinates the Christmas count for the whole state, he's there. Really top birders from throughout the state are there, and it was a neat experience. And then, once they come in, well, they go to see the other rarities that we have here in our area. They go to Green Key nearby, and they go to Wakota-Hatchie, and they go to the other places. Because we've had several rare birds this winter here in Palm Beach County, and it was pretty wild, pretty neat.
Just jumping off of how many people were interested in this particular bird, how is this beneficial to the county? Tourism dollars, generating environmental stewards, how is it all beneficial to all of us?
No, I think you're right. I think you've hit on two really important points. I think just awareness of the environment and appreciation for the environment. That's one of the things that birding, even intensive birding like some of us do, it creates awareness among ourselves, but then like you say, maybe other people pick up the hobby and become aware, and at the same time, people that are traveling for birding are spending money, and they're spending time in Palm Beach County, and I think that's an important factor. We have a lot of people that bird at all different levels, and when you have a county like Palm Beach that has a number of different venues, really good venues, for birding of whatever level you're at, I think that only helps tourism. That's just another reason for people to come to Palm Beach County. It's another reason for people to stay in our motels, to spend money at our restaurants. I don't think we can discount that. I think that's, and I think the money that Palm Beach County voters approved to buy the natural areas, the money that Palm Beach County spends each year on a really excellent park system, I think that's money very well spent. I mean, people come in from all over anyway to be here in the wintertime and throughout the year, and birding and the natural areas are another attraction for the people that come in.
What do you think about Palm Beach County parks in comparison to other locations that you've bird watched at? Like, what's the experience like in our parks?
I think the Parks Department does a great job. I mentioned a couple places, but my gosh, there's so many other places. Even John Prince Park right here was really active during this past migration season. I mean, we don't think of John Prince Park as being a migration hotspot, and I was just going out of town, unfortunately, as we had a little migration fallout last fall, and one of the first places that people became aware that, hey, we had a fallout going on was right here at John Prince Park, and people came from all over the county in that case, because there were birds dropping in. The weather was putting them down, and so this was during the fall migration, and it was pretty active. A lot of birds here, and a lot of birders came into John Prince Park because we had a lot of neat birds here.
Well, it's been great. Thank you so much for joining me, Chuck.
Thank you for having me and to talk to you.